Cool. We're in. Right. Deadly.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm talking with yourself. I'm here with Mr. Adam Shelley. Mr. Shelley, how is tricks? How is life? How are you getting on?
I'll go down just about surviving. Just trying to keep some type of normality and routine to my life at the moment with all the madness that's going on. But we're getting there. I'm coming up with different ways to keep myself busy each day and each week that passes. So that's all I can really do. How are you coping?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. Everyone's kind of saying the same sort of stuff, you know. It's mad to go from full tilt to sort of stop in a weekend, like, you know. And it's taking its time. I'm actually kind of lucky the day that it happened. I transport my gear from club to club sometimes. So I actually have some pads and stuff at home now that I wouldn't have had it happened any other day. I'd have had all my gear locked away in a club and somewhere else. But I have a few bits that I can hit it here. But yeah, it's crazy, and it is what it is. And that's kind of one of the reasons that we started making these sort of phone calls to people, is sort of get the community talking to each other and share a few stories and broaden the sort of picture for people who mightn't know all the details, you know. And yeah, look, I mean, I really appreciate you sitting down and having a chat with me. I know things are, in spite of being not busy, I'm sure you have enough to be doing to keep yourself occupied, so I do appreciate the time.
No, thanks for having me on. But that's actually, we were supposed to do yesterday, but yesterday was actually the first day I was like jam-packed busy throughout the quarantine. Yeah. We had a bit of digging and stuff to do out the back garden, and then I was doing a bit of work and stuff in the evening, so like it was just flat out. But today now is a bit more quarantine normality, so had plenty of time to do it.
Excellent. So I mean, like, let's just get into it a little bit. So how are you? I mean, let's talk the modern situation. Like, what are you doing to keep your training up now that you're stuck indoors? And I mean, you're going old school with digging, clearly, but there must be a little bit more to it than that.
To be honest, I'm quite lucky in that have like Ryan there, my younger brother. We've done all our training together for years, so we've been sparring and grappling and stuff on the grass out the back garden. We have a big back garden. We're lucky there, so we're getting loads of drilling and stuff. We've loads of pads and shields at home, so we're getting all that done in the garden. We have weights in the shed, so we're keeping up our strength work and stuff. And then we were blessed. We've a big park literally facing our door, like, across the road. So we're getting loads of running in there too. So to be honest, like, I'm still getting 2 sessions in a day, which is great. But it's not with the team. It's not proper sparring and stuff. But to be honest, like, I'm quite confident that when this is all said and done, like, I'll be ready to jump straight into a fight or some type of competition anyway.
Yeah.
The weight is creeping up a little bit just from being at home the whole day and just probably eating for the sake of it. But it's actually not doing me any harm either, because like I'm even saying it to Ryan, like, I'm so recovered between training sessions, like, just because we're resting, and then obviously nutrition is on point because I have time loads of stuff. So yeah, that's one good positive, and we're getting to do things we don't usually do. So looking to see how it affects my performance when we're all back.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and you're blessed here to have an asset like that. Like you said, like you have your brother to train with, you have your own sort of gym nearly set up there. So I mean, yeah, that's kind of a nice. That's a little bit of fortune there, I suppose, is the way to look at that one. But so I mean, like, you're a well decorated ITF fighter, and you're making a move now to MMA as well. I wonder if we can kind of go through the whole story and how things got started for you, and kind of bring us up to speed for people who might have been living under a rock and haven't been aware of you for a while. Why don't you talk us through how you got started in Taekwondo and where it came from there, and we'll sort of take a conversation on from there.
Yeah, basically, so my story, it's quite similar to a lot of guys in that, like, my parents did want to, well, my dad especially wanted me to have some involvement in martial arts and combat sports just for self-defense. Obviously it's important in this day and age. And then me having 2 brothers, so Ryan, my younger brother, Alex, my older brother, like, we would have been messing a lot at home, just fighting and stuff like that, showing an interest in that side of things just from watching movies and stuff. My dad just like old Bruce Lee movies and stuff, so obviously we're trying to mimic that. So when we started showing an interest, he just started researching local clubs. Like, it wasn't specific to Taekwondo. It could have been karate, could have been kickboxing, could have been anything. And there was a Taekwondo club nearby, put us into that, and it was a good club. It was actually under AIMA, what is it, Action International Martial Arts, something like that. Same patterns as us, but slightly different. So that's where we were for 3 years. Loved it up there. Just sparring, kicking pads, just the basic stuff.
Yeah.
Hadn't really done any competitions, played football as well. Then we moved to Australia for a year as a family. And then I trained WTF over there.
Right.
I didn't really enjoy it that much over there, to be honest. Don't know, was it the club or like it probably was the club, because like I didn't spar in the whole year I was there, considering I had 3 years Taekwondo experience.
Wow, and that's weird as a WT club as well, right?
Yeah, and like that would have been my favorite aspect to it. So
Yeah.
to be honest, I was getting a little bit browned off with that, but my dad kept me interested, just kept me going. Then when we moved back, it was only after a year, so that was in 2005. He registered us in Leicester with Niall Jones,
Yeah.
and that's where the real spark and love for it sort of set in, and we're there ever since. And that's where it all took off. Like,
it's funny the difference when you get a coach in a club that you really want to work in, the difference that can make.
That's unbelievable, and that's even something now that I'm trying to do with my kids in the club, and I speak to other coaches about this, and it's quite evident in anybody who's successful in the sport. The kids who have a love for it, the kids who love what they're doing, like they're like running in the door to train and they're there 20 minutes early. That's the first ingredient to success, really. Like, because if you don't love what you're doing, it's going to be quite miserable, isn't it? So
yeah, and like that's not just in martial arts, that's across the board, right? I mean, you know, you got to enjoy what you're doing, or else you just give up on it, and or you won't give up on it, but you'll be miserable.
Exactly, yeah, and you won't put that extra bit that's required in, like, you know. So that's one thing. Mr. Jones was really, whether he meant it or not, he just made me love Taekwondo. Like, you know, I just couldn't get enough of it. Want to do extra classes left, right, and center, and that just sort of guided me towards the national team then. And obviously, that was a completely different ball game there.
Absolutely, and I definitely want to get into that. But I mean, so like, I mean, were you a broad spectrum Taekwondo guy? Patterns, sparring, spec tech, the works? Was that everything? It didn't matter to you, or was it, or still like, no, I just really want to go fighting? Was that still the sort of main thing?
In the beginning, like, you know, see, we would have been in the INTA when I first started competing. So I don't remember them ever doing spec tech or power breaking for color belts as junior.
Yeah.
So but I always did sparring and patterns. I wasn't that successful in patterns really, but I always, like, actually I did enjoy competing in patterns, and obviously Mr. Jones is so technically in every way good at patterns and stuff. So I was always trying to push for medals, because there was other kids in the club that were doing really well in patterns, and my younger brother Ryan was pretty good at them. So up until I was senior, I would have always competed in both. Up until I was senior, sparring and patterns, and then pattern, just because I wanted to put so much into sparring, and I knew what it took to sort of get to the top level. I parked competing in patterns. I still trained in the club, but I didn't give it the extra attention it needed. I just put all that into sparring then.
And I mean, you're coming through in that generation where we start to sort of see specialists emerge, right? Whereas I think a few sort of campaigns before your kind of peak, I think you would have had guys that were multidisciplined all the way through their career and had been, and you know, I wonder, that's a really interesting one. I mean, about the whole sort of specializing early versus specializing late. And I mean, do you think it's something that's becoming more prevalent now, seeing specialists emerge quicker?
Definitely, yeah. Like, for example, the likes of Mark Trotter, Alexander Leonov is a Russian guy, Maxim Bajold, all them lads would have been sort of quite successful in both disciplines. I'd say back around, you're probably talking 2005, 2006, 2007, maybe up as far as 2010. At the moment, I can't really think of anybody that's really successful in both. I know Jamie Williams competes in both, but he gets the majority of his medals in sparring.
Yeah, and I know even talking to him recently, he was sort of going, I think I'm going to just focus exclusively nearly on the sparring and stuff. And so you're starting to see
Hong started to do that at the end, didn't he? Did Hong still compete in patterns near the end of his career then?
I think so, but I couldn't be sure off the top of my head. I know he was always in there.
He was always in there, but the bulk of his success came from sparring. All of his medals came from sparring. I know that. Timothy Boss would be pretty good at both.
Sylvia Fariga, she's up there as well, isn't she?
Yeah, I hope I'm not leaving anybody out there now, but they're a good few of the juniors, and that sort of leads into what we're just saying. The juniors can do both, but at senior level, it seems very, very rare that you see somebody that's successful in both.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it just, I suppose it speaks to the standard and the work you have to put in each division, right? Like it's not
It's
something
the
you can
same
kind
when
of.
kids are competing in Gaelic football and hurling.
Yeah,
You get a kid who can be, let's say, a really gifted athlete, and right up through their teenage years, they're playing both. I knew lads, they're playing like club hurling, club football, school hurling, school football, and they're just being. And then eventually, once they start to hit under 21, they're hitting senior level. They have to pick, like, you
yeah,
can't beat both. So yeah, it's the same in all sports, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing around coaching, and I want to get into that because I know you've gone that road now with your own club in the future, and I will definitely come on to what your sort of philosophy is in a minute. But I want to kind of dig into your own career a little bit before we go down that road, if you don't mind. So I mean, you were always competing national circuits because there was tournaments to go to, or I mean, when did you sort of say to yourself, do you know what, I need to be serious about my training, and I think I have a good shot at being really good at this sport and not just sort of making up numbers to sort of go to competitions for fun. I mean, when did it become a serious kind of thing for you to go, right, I'm gonna put a few gold medals in my pocket and the rest of you can be damned?
Yeah, I'd say so right up through sort of when I was, let's say, 12 to 15. So, you're talking color. I got my black belt at 15. So I was sort of, like hit and miss. I'd take a gold, next one I wouldn't get a medal, next one I get a silver, next one I get a bronze. I'd go in, have a go, and I was up there with the lads in my group and stuff. And then I'd say when I was about 14, a good mate of mine, Conor Grassick, he competed in WTF. So he was very good at their sport, and he competed on their Irish team, and he started telling me he was representing Ireland. And so that really got me going, well, geez, I'd love to represent Ireland. And
Yeah.
so I started asking Mr. Jones about the Irish team, and he started filling me in on basically the system, on how it works, the way there's squad sessions, and you go through a selection process. So that really took my interest, and I started to sort of just have that in the back of my mind all the time. Like when I was training, I was just saying, like, I'd like to get there. So when it came around and I got selected for Argentina, the World Championships, went over again, not knowing what was over there, not knowing the standard. Went out in my second round. I got beaten by a Slovenian. Held my own, but I was below par in the division. Like, I wouldn't have gotten near a medal.
So this is junior worlds in Argentina, is it?
This would have been junior worlds in Argentina in November 2009. I was 15.
Yeah, okay.
And then the next one, I was thinking that would have been the one, and I got beaten there again. And it was after Sweden 2010, my dad went to that one, and he saw a lot of little. He's always had a good eye for things. He knows what he's looking at, and he really was very influential then, and had a big impact on how I sort of started preparing for competitions, and helped me out with training and stuff. And that's when I really upped my level, and that's when I became I would consider myself a medal prospect. And I would have been really pushing for medals, and it turned out to be the Slovakia European Championships in the 2011 October. That was my first gold medal then, and sort of went on from there and was successful as a senior.
Yeah. So do you think that was important to have that good junior run before going senior?
Yeah, it definitely helped, all right. But even still, like going into senior then was another step up. Like, I lost my first two senior competitions before I had any success.
What was that like? Going from junior world champion, here we go. I'm up there now, and you go out and you're out. Like, was that kind of humbling? I mean, did you have to kind of dust yourself off and go, right, I'm not all I'm cracked up to be here, or was it sort of, oh, I kind of thought I expected as much, or like, give us.
To be honest, I actually think yeah, you're right. It made me a little bit cocky, I'd say, because I won the Europeans in the October. I won. Then I was in my leaving cert year, so I didn't do the junior Europeans in the April. I didn't compete in that one.
Okay.
So now we're fast forward to now we're in October 2012, and it was the World Cup in Brighton.
Yeah, I was at that one.
So this is my first senior competition. I turned 18, and I put in a serious amount of training for it. And to be honest, I just thought I had the game figured out. Like, I was like, no one's going to touch me here. And Ryan had won 2 Europeans at this stage, so we hadn't been beaten now in a year and a half internationally. So I'm going like, you know, this nobody's gonna touch me here. Like
Yeah.
and then I got beaten in the quarterfinals, so it was a little knockback, and it sort of reminded me that I needed to maybe just go back to the drawing board, and that I had made a step up in competition when I went to senior.
And do you remember that quarterfinal match?
I do, yeah. It was actually, and it was against Ludwig Sale, is his name, from Norway.
Okay.
I ended up fighting another. He beat me at that one, and I went on. I beat him 3 times after that.
Yeah.
But it was a good one. Then it was a good. He's a tall guy as well, so that's what sort of I struggled with that. You know, I think he even has a bit of height on me. He's very tall for himself. So yeah, we ended up having a few good matchups after that, and we're good mates now. Like, he's sound lad.
Great. That's cool. I mean, it's so I mean, here we are now. You're at sort of 2012. World Cup is gone. Where does the kind of competitive journey go now? And I mean, like, how did you bring yourself up now to go, okay, right? I thought I was working hard at junior, and I thought I had myself figured out. Like, what changed in your training? What changed in your mind and your approach? Like, how did you sort of say, right, let's get on?
Funnily enough, 2013 wasn't really a great year either. Well, look, nationally and everything it was. I won the Irish Open for kickboxing, which was a big win as a senior.
Yeah.
I had won all the national competitions in Ireland for Taekwondo and kickboxing. Actually, I won the kickboxing nationals that year, so I had a really good year nationally. But internationally, I didn't get picked for the Europeans in Sweden in April, which I wasn't happy about at the time. Little bit of political stuff there, but it's water under the bridge between me and the lads. So Hong and Dylan Fitzgibbon ended up representing Ireland that year at the Europeans, and then I got back in for the World Championships in Benidorm.
Yeah,
and I was beaten at that one as well. I was beaten in the quarterfinals to an Argentinian, very good, solid lad, smart lad. And that I remember after that one, so thinking that I had learned my mistakes from Brighton, put in a serious training camp for the Worlds in Benidorm, and then got beaten. So I was devastated after that. I was really like gutted. Like, I remember, Jesus, that was one of the that took me a bit of time to get over and everything. And then I just that was it. Then I didn't lose after that. Like, you know, just whatever happened. To be honest as well, I was just learning so much from them defeats, and then watching the divisions, and like I just got momentum. Then once I won the European Cup, I got confidence then, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting, like, because I keep seeing this pattern over and over again. People who are successful at the top end of the spectrum, they've always gone through a load of sort of, you know, adversity that they have to kind of grind out, and sort of taking losses that you didn't see coming, and dusting yourself down and getting back in the saddle. It just seems to be the only way people succeed in this game. I don't think anyone kind of had, oh yeah, I always had a perfect history, yeah, never lost a match, no, it was all good. It just doesn't seem to happen, right? I mean, people always have these stories of like, and I was really focused, and then it didn't work, and you kind of, I think that's really speaks a lot to the sort of mindset you need to approach these things, you know.
It's funny that you say that, actually, because I've been getting a good bit of reading in over this sort of quarantine. Like, you know, I did sports science in college, so I love to still read up on articles and stuff like that related to it. And I found a good one. Actually, I'm trying to think. John Mackey might have sent it on to me, or he advised me of it. I can't remember. Anyway, it was about it was a study done on, I think, American footballers, over in America, obviously, and it looked at, so it basically categorized them into 3 categories, these players. So it was like elite, so guys who are really successful in their career, some guys who are maybe moderately successful, and then guys who weren't successful at all. And it was nearly directly proportional to the guys who were really successful and achieved great things weren't successful at all in their childhood and teen years.
Yeah. This is the whole late specialization argument thing. I think I think he's pushed this on to me as well.
I'll send this on to you if you haven't got it. And then the guys who experienced very little success as a senior, where a lot of them were extremely dominant in their younger ages. So as you said, maybe they hadn't faced that diversity, they hadn't faced adversity. So when it did happen, maybe then their later lives, they weren't great at dealing with it, or they didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Whereas other guys had sort of had it the whole way up. And it's a matter of, all right, well, if stuff doesn't go right, dust yourself off and go again. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I find that whole skill acquisition stuff really, really, it's a fascinating area of. I'm doing, like I said, I'm interested in that whole area myself, and I'm reading a lot about this. I'm reading a book called Range by a guy called his name's gone. Epstein is his second name, but I can't remember his first name, and I don't know which one. David Epstein, maybe David Epstein. Anyway, and he's all about that whole idea that it's not about sort of Tiger Woods approach where you get a golf club when you're 2 and you stick with it forever. He's very much in this idea that you play a broad range of sports through your junior years and then specialize much later. And these guys go on to be the elite sort of, men and women in their sports. And it makes me wonder, did you play many sports when you were going up through the Taekwondo career?
I did, yeah. Like, I would have played Gaelic football right up until I was 15, and it was only when I got selected for the World Championships that then I said, okay, I'll park the football, and that's when I started becoming, like, in school I did cross country, then I played Gaelic football, Taekwondo. I would have been always out playing football on the street with my mates and stuff like that. So I don't know if I actually answered it. To answer your earlier question, I probably only started taking Taekwondo really, really seriously and training more than 2-3 times a week when I was 15.
Yeah, interesting.
15 and a half, So it's something that I'm always conscious of now with my kids in the club. We encourage all the kids and their parents to keep them in football, keep them in swimming, keep them in squash or whatever the hell it is they're playing.
Yeah, I'm the same. There's guys come to me and they go, "Oh, football's changed to Tuesday." It's like, okay, go play football, and maybe we'll see you on Thursday, or maybe we'll see you next year. We're playing the long game here. It's okay.
That's it, 100%. Just go, have fun, whatever you're having fun doing.
Yeah, at that age.
And then that just comes back to what we were talking about loving something. If you look like whatever you're loving, go with it, and chances are you will be successful.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to have talented people in the club, but if they don't enjoy it, you can't force them to stay, no matter how talented they are, right? And nor should you. I mean, but cool. So I mean, we're still on the. So I mean, yeah, like I said, after the sort of, was it Europeans in Slovenia? Is when you were saying you.
My last loss.
Yeah, well, the one before you really started to peak on. I just want to pick it up from there and see where.
Worlds in Benidorm.
Worlds in Benidorm. Sorry, thanks.
Yeah.
So after that, I mean, it was like you say, it was non-stop from then, and I mean, that's. Is there any kind of standout moment in that period for you where you thought, this is I'm doing what I'm smashing records here, like where could I go with this, like?
Well, to be so after Benidorm, and so in between Benidorm and the next competition, which was the Europeans in Italy.
What year was this?
So this is now, so Benidorm would have been October 2013.
Yeah.
And then the Europeans in Italy would have been April 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get my appendix out at the end of January or beginning of February. I can't remember when it was sometime around there. And so I wasn't supposed to be even going to the Europeans in Italy.
Yeah.
And there was going to be 2 guys in the spot. I can't remember. There ended up being a spot available for me at -70. So by the time I sort of got all my recovery and everything in, I think I only had 6 weeks, 5 weeks maybe to prepare for the competition. And that was a slow initial start because I'd been coming off doing nothing after getting my appendix out.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I went to the competition was because Ryan was going, and I was like, do you know what? I'll just go and compete. Like, I wasn't expecting much of myself at all. And then I went and won the competition. I had 6 tough fights. So that sort of taught me a lot about mindset and how I should be sort of approaching the competition. And then when I compare that to Benidorm and Brighton previous to that, I probably trained non-stop for 16 weeks in the lead up to them. Not one injury, not one anything, just non-stop. And I probably piled a lot of pressure on myself. But in Italy, I was sort of going in being like, let's see what happens here. And I ended up winning. Like,
do you think that's sort of, that's an interesting one. And do you think that's sort of played into that factor? Like you said, I mean, did you add too much in the other, too much pressure, too much headspace not being given? I mean, it's a weird one, right? You'd be hard pushed as a coach to sort of go, you know what? I don't want you to take this too seriously. Maybe let's not train for 6 weeks and we'll pick it up in a few. It'd be,
I
but
know. No, it's crazy. I suppose just as a coach, then we can maybe, in order to get some part of that mindset in, making our training sessions enjoyable, like, and interactive. Richie Ford is doing a lot on that at the
yeah,
moment, like, rather than having it sort of, prison-like and dictating what goes on the session and having it like grueling training sessions all the time. Make it fun, make it challenging, and maybe that can create that mindset that I had going into that competition.
yeah. It's that sort of relaxed attitude of, well, I don't really expect anything out of this. So I mean, I wonder. It's a weird one to sort of how do you instill that in competitors to be sort of chilled? It's very, very strange. Okay, so I mean that must have been a nice little kind of confidence boost then after that happens. I mean,
that was it. So then it was the European Cup in where was that? Hungary at the end of that year. I won that, and again all the time, like, so in them two competitions, I beat the bulk of the best -70 competitors there was. So like in my head, I was always trying to get better from competition to competition, but I just, after them two especially, I was just like, okay, like once I get good preparation in and I'm in good physical condition, I had a belief that I was like, I'm not going to be beaten, like, because I was like, I'm after doing it twice before, I can do it again and again and again. So I never left any stone unturned in training. It sounds cliche, but like I was training as if I hadn't won, and I didn't have to try too hard to do that. I don't know where that came about. I had it in my head. I never got complacent, and that sort of came from having my dad around and having my dad and my mom, both of them in my ear. Like they'd always be very. They wouldn't put you up on a pedestal, that type of thing. Like no matter what. Come back from winning a competition, you still got to do your chores when you get back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There you go.
And then we'd highlight the weaknesses from a particular competition. Although I had won, we'd sit down and pick apart everything that I did bad or every mistake that I made. And then so it was always about chasing the perfect performance, not getting the gold medal. It doesn't matter about the medal. It was always about chasing that perfect performance. Right. And I think that's what really helped them gold medals keep coming in.
I mean, you mentioned your brother a few times as well. I mean, does that add having a partner there in the house that kind of keep you accountable, who's going through the same journey?
Yeah. I know, that's cool. Yeah, and just and then especially now, like during the quarantine, like my training's been going well, but sometimes I'm just getting dips of motivation and likewise so is he, because I'm like when is my next fight gonna be? I don't know. So then it takes the other one to go, come on, will you? Like we're not doing anything else. We're going running or we're going out to the shed, whatever it is. It just helps that way,
Yeah, it's nice to have a secondary backup to your own.
Big time, yeah, it's great.
Okay, so I mean, talk to me then. Are we at 16, 17 around this time now?
Around 2015 then was a big year. I won the Worlds and Europeans in the same year. That was always a goal. A few of the coaches, and I often heard people saying that you're really considered one of the sort of tops when you win a Worlds and Europeans in the same year. Like people used to say, like you can get lucky in winning a one-off Europeans, or you can get lucky. I'm not saying people get lucky. Well, it happens. But you can win one here and there. But when you win the two big ones in 1 year, the Worlds and the Europeans, there's no cheating that. So 2015, when I got that was nice, like, and it was quite, like, I was happy with my performances in the competitions, which was good too. And then 2016 was much of the same. I actually did a Wacko kickboxing Europeans in 2016. Rather than go to the World Cup in Hungary. The World Cup in Hungary was on, and I went to the Wacko Europeans instead. And I was beaten at that in the quarterfinals, I think it was. But it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made, because I learned so much from that competition too, just about different styles and what was out there and Wacko and stuff like that. It really opened up a different world to me.
And did you go? Were you training kickboxing as well in tandem to training?
I was training kickboxing at the time with Robbie Haw in Elite Fighter. I started training around there back in 2011.
Right.
And that's myself and Ryan like competed nationally and internationally in kickboxing alongside our Taekwondo for years, just because we wanted to compete. We wanted to compete so much, like, you know. So, like, I'd say around from 2012 to 2017, I'd say we fought over 10 times a year.
It's mad, like, I mean, because that's not, you know, it's not like it's a funded sport either. It's expensive to do this. You know what I mean? Like,
that's like, I didn't any of them years. I didn't go on holidays any of
yeah,
them years. Like, you know, all my money was put aside for these competitions. I was working part time in Marks and Spencers at that time. I didn't have the club, and just every spare penny I had went on competitions, camps, new gear. Yeah, that was it. Like, you know, that's just that was what we put our time and effort into for years.
yeah. It's again, it comes back to that. If you love what you do, you don't mind. You know, I mean, that's really really cool. I mean, it speaks a lot to the sort of unseen work. I love that image of the pyramid of success, or the iceberg. Sorry, you know, you've
I
probably seen,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, where you see the tip of the iceberg, and then underneath you see all the grinding and rot that you have to go through to get there. And I mean, these sort of stories, I love eking these out of people like that. I mean, that's cool, you know. Um, so I mean, you've gone double now in Worlds, Euros. You've had this eye-opening wacko experience. Is this all culminating then to go towards 17 Worlds in Ireland? Was that?
Yeah, so then in 2017, I did Worlds and Euros again. Euros in April and Worlds in October. And Ryan did that along with me. Ryan he had stopped competing he missed a couple of Taekwondo
Yeah, no,
competitions in college. He competed in WACO too. There was a few things going on. So then 2017, he came back. So we both won the Europeans and we both won the Worlds. So we're like, right, this is a good sort of platform now. We've achieved a lot of our goals, and we had been talking about the MMA for a while, and we had been like the thing with the MMA. So with its increasing popularity and us wanting to do it, like we would have kept competing in Taekwondo, but unfortunately, as we were talking about the funding situation, and with both of us being in college, we didn't have the time then to give, let's say, a Taekwondo Europeans, to give that the time and effort it requires while learning a completely new sport in MMA. You know, so like if it was a case of we were fully funded and we weren't attending college, we would have kept competing in Europeans and Worlds right up to this point now, probably where we're turning professional. But it just became a point that we had to stop competing in the Taekwondo stuff to give the grappling and stuff our time and effort to get to the standard we need to be. It was a tough decision to make and all, but I think it was the right decision because, as I said, we had achieved our goals, and our sort of goal is to be like sort of the best ever type of thing, like, you know. And I think you need to venture into MMA to sort of really test your skills. So that's what we're at.
It's I definitely want to circle on to this point in a while, all right, about it. Because it's an interesting world, and I'd love to get your perspective coming from Taekwondo, and you're kind of hitting a few things. Yeah, I'll dig all of that out of you in a minute if you don't mind.
Yeah, no bother at all. We just keep going at whatever. Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, I mean, you know, you've had such a successful, you know, tournament career in Taekwondo. I wonder, can we dig into some of the kind of practical sides of, you know, advice for people who are looking at this story and looking at yourself and upcoming fighters, whether they're color belts or junior black belts or whatever, and they're gonna, you know, what's your sort of take for people like who have this ambition to go on and be, you know, national fighters or international champions? What are you advising these people to sort of take from, or, you know, what would you put on the table for them as, you know,
first thing I would say to anyone, and this is something I tapped into, like I thought about it a while ago and I sort of learned it for myself. You have to really ask yourself and be honest with yourself and ask yourself why you're doing it. And sort of go, am I doing this to get a few Instagram posts and get likes on Instagram? Am I doing it to have in my bio that I'm a national fighter? Like, really, what? Or is it because you, like, deep down, like, you have sort of a desire to be the best and to win a Worlds and Europeans? Like, where is it coming from? Is it just to go socialize with your friends through Taekwondo and go on a bit of a holiday? while competing. So that's one thing I'd say. Sort of look yourself in the mirror and go, right, is this what I really want? Am I willing to make a serious amount of sacrifice for this? And if the answer is yeah, then you've achieved the first target anyway. And then you need to go and seek out the best sparring partners. You need to seek out the best coaches, to watch the best guys, and just immerse yourself in it and just go learn. And no ego. Leave the ego at the door, and just leave no stone unturned and give it your all.
Yeah, that's solid advice, I think, for anything in any pursuit in life, not just maybe martial arts, right?
Yeah. But you know what, and I think it's like a lot of that stuff, like for example, like most people will have heard that before, but and when I used to hear it over and over again about different things, you sort of go, that's just what people say. But it is that's all it is. There's no magic trick. There's no magic drill. There's no magic conditioning exercise. There's no magic YouTube tutorial that can teach you. Like, it's blood, sweat, and tears. It's hard work. And Absolutely. As we said, it goes to every aspect of life, you know?
I mean, big time. I mean, you only have to look at your own example here. 2009, out in Argentina, and then, nearly, 8 years later, 2017, and you're doing double world Euro. Like, I mean, that's 7-8 years of graft, right? That's not, I decided to do this next week and I sort of had to go for a few hours and then it came good. Like, I mean, yeah, there's method there, all right.
Mornings, yeah, that's what it's all about.
Let's talk some of the practical sides of actual ITF sparring, right? Because there's some of this. I'd love to pick your brain for how you actually approach style and specifically what you think of the different styles in ITF Taekwondo. I mean, sparring has kind of changed over the years. There are shots now that you wouldn't have seen years ago, and there are shots years ago that are straight up minus points now. So, I mean, how do you approach style in Taekwondo and ITF Taekwondo? I mean, did you consciously say, I have a style and this is how I like to fight? Or did it kind of evolve naturally for you? Who were your influences on that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it definitely evolved for me. Like, initially I would have been a kicker. Front leg would have been really my most sort of dominant thing. And then I got a groin injury around 2014, and I had to I didn't want to sit out of training because I would have been bored out of my tree. So I just said for about like months, actually, for nearly the whole of 2014 when I was training, I barely kicked and I just used my hands. And I started doing a bit of boxing and stuff like that just for a bit of crack. That doesn't really cross over that much to ITF. No. But I just noticed putting myself, I used to not even wear my feet pads in sparring so that I wouldn't be tempted to kick. And I just used my hands. And that just then, from 2015 onwards, then I think I would have been most known for my hands rather than my feet, even though I'm a tall guy and stuff. And again, it just came from sort of an injury. Develop that side of my game, and that's what I really like to use then.
Yeah, that's that whole constraints-led approach thing by accident nearly, right? Where you're taking away this thing.
Yeah, I didn't intentionally do it. Nobody told me to do it. Nobody was really doing that much at the time. And it was literally, like I said, an injury. So I said, well, I'm not sitting up there on the bench, like just watching training. I said, I'll jump in and use my hands here. And like, I got battered at the start because I didn't have my kicks. Like, I didn't have my kicks to fall back on. I only had hands. And then by the end of it, my hands were my strongest tool, So, so in terms of style, like I've never sort of and I've always been a believer in playing around with different styles and sort of in training, like let's say I was after a competition and some nights in training I'd say, all right, I'm just gonna mimic such and such a body, and I'm just gonna try put myself in their boots and have a go at their game and see what I like about it and see what I don't like about it. And then I go, I could take a bit of that for sure, and I'd take a bit out of it. Then the next day I'd mimic somebody completely different and I'd try that, and that really helped me sort of piece together aspects of my game for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I like that idea of kind of putting yourself in the opponent's shoes so sort of know what they're doing before they're doing it, sort of stuff. That's interesting. What about, I mean, even more sort of, let's go more sort of, even sort of rudimentary, right? I mean, because there's common problems that people have to solve when they're sparring, right? I mean, here's a common thing that I get all the time from my kind of maybe more junior grades. Like, they're much taller than me. How do I fight the tall guy? Do you know? And I mean, I think height in Taekwondo is one of those things that kind of can be a real asset. You've been a tall fighter. I mean, you know what's how do you deal with different types like that? I mean, how do you approach like tall fighters versus shorter fighters, people who like to fight outside, these kind of things, you know?
So again, just sort of like what you said there, I would have always been the taller fighter, predominantly in my division. And then, yeah, sometimes like I came against Colin Adolf from Germany. I
Yeah,
fought him
yeah,
in team sparring a few times, and I was able to beat him in team sparring because, you know, obviously the majority of this work would have been done in the training hall, just preparing for these events. But I used to say to myself, what do I hate when I'm fighting a smaller guy? So
okay.
if I'm fighting a smaller guy, what do I not like them to do? What do I hate when they do? And the answer was move and rapidly change direction and capitalize when I drop my leg heavy. So then when I'd come against Colin Ladoff, that's what I'd do. He was
Yeah.
taller than me. He was a better kicker than me. He had better reach than me. So I'd move, I'd move, I'd move, I'd move. I'd look and I'd wait for my opportunity. And as soon as my opportunity would arise, I'd go in with the hands. So this that sort of attitude and approach, I heard it before that sometimes I can't remember if it's common among all football clubs or if there was one football club in particular that did it. They would often in training they'd make the attackers play as defenders and
Yeah,
then
okay.
defenders play as attackers. So you get to see what the other person, you get to see what your basically your opponents are seeing. So like I said there, Colin Carroll was a huge training partner of mine over the
Yeah.
years. He's like another brother for me and Ryan. And Colin is shorter than us. And in my opinion, he's the fastest. I actually don't think it's an opinion. It's quite standardized. He's the fastest fighter ever in ITF.
That
The
blitz of
guy
his
can
off the stop is just outrageous.
it's crazy. So I was very lucky in that I'd have him as well for training. So I'd go, all right, well, I just hate when Colin does this to me, like when he's moving like a blue arse fly, and
Mm.
then he'd wait for a little gap and he'd be in with his front hand or whatever. So then I'd apply that to taller guys. And so now, like I like to in the club, for example, with the kids, I'll get them to do scenarios where one side is kicker only, and maybe they're winning the match. So we'll set the constraint that there's 30 seconds left. They're 3 points up. So that means they don't actually have to go forward. Maybe they're sitting back in and just pumping that leg constantly. And the
Mm.
other guys have to get them 3 points back and just putting themselves in that situation. And then we'll reverse the roles. And then I'll ask them, what do you prefer? What do you like about being the kicker? What do you like about being the blitzer? And we'll just discuss the whole thing. And it lets them experience every style, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a really good approach, and I'm doing similar stuff with my own guys. Um, and you know what I found? It's really interesting because the ones that wouldn't be kind of mad on sparring, when you play sparring with that kind of constraint approach, they kind of go, oh yeah, I enjoy this game because it's more control. They feel more in control. I mean, because you take all the chaos of sparring away, and then you kind of remove some of the fear or something. I don't know. It's fantastic to see that work on especially on kind of kids as they build up. Then their confidence comes out because suddenly, like you say, you've set a game up where if they like being a kicker, they'll get more out of that game. And then they're kind of, yeah, I think it's really cool
Yeah.
approach.
One thing I got off Richie, actually, myself and Richie would talk quite a bit about methods and different things that work, was his sort of theory is to make everything like a game.
Yeah,
And by you have to sort of come down to their level. So when I sort of opened the club, I hadn't had any experience. I can't remember what it's like to be training at that age.
yeah,
And like I just don't remember what it's like. So sorry, there's a bit of light there, just annoying. I'll move this way. Yeah. So like my last couple of years or my last time competing in Taekwondo was at the highest level, the elite level.
yeah.
So like we wouldn't use games as a method of training. We talk. So he was sort of saying to me, you know, you have to remember that they're kids, like, you know, so he does stuff like, you know, okay, whatever the constraint is, and whoever gets 5 side kicks first, the other person has to do 10 burpees.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
see, that's not something we would have, me and Ryan would ever train like, but the kids love it. And as you're saying there, the kids that don't particularly like sparring, they can relate to that because it's like a competition for them. So that's something that I've really, I see that they like that and they respond well to it.
Yeah, yeah. It's often difficult not to sort of coach kids as little adults, right? You know,
That's it, yeah.
and you need to take that approach somewhere else. You just don't get buy-in and you don't get results. I'm kind of like, let's see, the conversation's kind of naturally evolving this way. I mean, when you went then to open a club, what was the driving force around? When did you open the club actually?
Opened the club at the end of 2015.
15. Okay, cool. So I mean, you're still heavily competing, and there's still. So, what was any specific reasoning behind saying I want to be an instructor now? Was that?
It was just in college we had a couple of coaching modules. And I was starting to sort of look into it. It was just interesting me a little bit about different coaching methods and stuff. And I was like, you know what? Like, it was something that I'd been thinking about on and off for about a year. And then it was just when I started reading this stuff and all, I was like, you know what? I wouldn't mind starting to pass some of this knowledge on and trying to just develop a little group and a little club. And like, I didn't really know what my intentions were at the start, like in terms of it. And at the start it was very small, like, you know, myself and Ryan wouldn't be very big on social media really, and are very tech savvy with that sort of thing. So I think we just did flyers door to door, and we got a very little response at the start, and we didn't even have a Facebook page or a website or anything. And we're just sort of going about our business, and we had a little group, and it just started to grow and grow and grow. And now we've a great group of guys up there, and you know what? I love going up to the club. Like, I'm missing them terribly during this time.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and we've some kids that are really like, we're building up good relationships with them, and they're catching the bug that we caught fucking 10, 12, 15 years ago. Like, you know, and I can see it in them, and I can see their love for competitions or their love for other things. So I love just trying to help guide. If I can have any impact on just guiding them in that journey, like I'd be delighted with that. Like, you know.
Absolutely. And I mean, had you in your own club where you were training? Had you been doing any helping out with that, or?
I had done some bits and pieces with Mr. Jones before. Hadn't done it in a while before I opened the club, but there was a time when I used to help out with some of the kids' classes. And again, I enjoyed that and just seeing how they sort of respond to different things. But like, the amount I've learned since opening is just ridiculous. Like, you know, that like, no. And it was funny actually, when I first opened, or when I was I don't know how I opened at one stage. I was on the phone to Richie and I was asking him for bits of advice on things, and he was saying, look, like, you'll start now in September, whenever you're starting, and the following September you'll look back and go, what was I doing? Like, you know, he was like, you learn on the job. He was like, you just won't figure everything out. You won't do everything right. You'll make mistakes. But he was like, that's just all part of the process. So then I was waiting for the right moment. And then I said, you know what, feck it, let's just open. And exactly what he said. When I look back to what we were doing, sort of advertising wise, structure to our training wise, when I look back then, I'm like, oh my God, but look, it's all part of the process, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I can vouch for that journey as well. We've had very similar experience, you know, and it's just part of that game, and it's a fun side of Taekwondo that you don't. It's another element of it that I really enjoy about the martial art, right? It's not. It's that kind of, it's just a different side of it, that giving back side. It's kind of really.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's really
different. It's hard, I find, to balance your own training with coaching, and it's very easy to get swept up being a coach and not being a martial artist sometimes, you know. I think that's the only caveat for anyone pondering being an instructor out there. Don't forget to do your own training. I mean, but look, I mean, at the same time now, recently enough, you've kind of gone towards the MMA world as well. That's something that's come out, and I'm always fascinated by this question. I've been asking other instructors about this, and you know, I mean, Taekwondo as a martial art has its sort of perception, and people have seen and make their mind up about it. I mean, before, years ago, you couldn't see what went on in a dojo and the doors were closed, and that was it, tough. If you weren't in the club, you don't know what happens. Whereas now the internet shows everything, right? And we're open, and it's open for critique. And I think sometimes Taekwondo gets a bit of critique for being, this kind of soft, flicky style that doesn't really have any effectiveness, and it's always, well, that'd never work in MMA. And I mean, I'd really love to gather your opinion in this, because you're coming from Taekwondo to MMA, and are you finding the crossover working? Are you finding that this martial art is it's actually all nonsense, and I had to relearn everything I needed to do, or is it becoming effective? Is there, let's just ponder this topic for a while, if you don't mind.
No, yeah, I'm certainly, there's some aspects of it that are so effective like that. I'm hoping they're the tools that are going to take me to the top, solid side kick, good back kick, all this type of stuff. There's some areas then that obviously aren't so effective, and that's probably more down to the rules in ITF at the moment. The contact at the moment is a topic of discussion for a lot of people. The way it's after getting very, it just seems year on year it seems to, the tolerance for it is getting less and less, which is changing the style. So I suppose from a technique and sort of tools perspective, there's amazing tools in Taekwondo to bring to MMA. There's no question. Hook kick, axe kick, side kick, back reverse, all these kicks, a lot of the guys in MMA have never experienced, have never had them thrown at them before.
I always think that switch back kick has a place in MMA that just hasn't been opened up yet.
Absolutely. So I suppose then it's about how they're applied then, and that comes down to the practitioner, I suppose. So if you're a pure tournament style fighter in the current day, and you're using them same techniques, but the sole purpose of them techniques is to score a point, then maybe if you make that decision to go to MMA, there will be some slight tweaking that will be needed in order to get a little bit of power behind them shots and maybe land some damage, which I don't think takes much time. It doesn't take much effort. Small little adjustments will definitely do that. One of the biggest things I think for Taekwondo, so the biggest positive for Taekwondo going into MMA is the dexterity of the legs and the shot diversity of kicks, 100%. The downside is hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was lucky that I had started boxing a couple of years previous before I even moved to MMA, and my little bit of experience in kickboxing. So that has helped me with my hands. But when I look at a lot of the current guys in ITF, it's the hands that would let them down in MMA. Not kicks, nothing like that. It would be just the hands. Yeah, for sure.
And is that just because we lack the varied range of shots in ITF hands?
I think it's more so because we're not allowed to sort of hit hard with the hands. When we punch in ITF, and I've done it for years, we arm punch, that flick, and it's to get the score. I did it for years. You're not taught or encouraged to get the hip or body weight behind shots because you'll be penalized for it. You're just sort of taught maybe 1, 2, 3 lead leg turning kick, and it's like boom, 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 and it's just tippy tappy, which is good for scoring points. But if you were to ever venture into kickboxing or MMA, it's something that would have to be tweaked, for sure. And it's just because of the rules in ITF. Yeah. So actually, I was only thinking about this today. So with all the rule changes and that in current sparring, it's becoming very well, it has been for the last few years, very, very sport-like, and very unique, a very unique sport in terms of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. I'd love to see them introduce another discipline and have it as a full contact discipline.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's always touted, right? Why isn't there a full contact side to ITF Taekwondo,
Yeah. Did you ever watch any clips of that old pro Taekwondo?
Is this where they have the blue and the red thing on? And yeah, I did. I've seen a bit of it.
It's good, and one of Oleg's, Oleg Solove.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I have seen this. Yeah.
His lads, Andrei Pashnik, I think his name is. He was very good in ITF over the years. He definitely won 1 Europeans for sure. He went into that. Now he got beaten by Raymond Daniels, which there's no shame
there. Yeah.
Top door. but he was quite successful in it, and they ran it before. I remember actually asking Thomas Barada about it at one of the competitions. I was looking to get involved in it, but he was saying that it's not really done anymore. It's not something they do. They don't fund it. They don't. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who were the organisers, but it's not something they do anymore. But I'd love to see that brought back in, because I think we have some phenomenal athletes, and if they were allowed to sort of go in there with that intention of, sort of knocking people out, I think you'd see some very entertaining fights.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's that whole debate, right? Is it it's that martial art versus sport sort of problem sometimes that.
That's right, yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's just a hard one to call sometimes. I know what you mean.
And then because of when you look at the sort of the philosophy of Taekwondo, with it being below one victory and all that, that's why sometimes I just think with our current sparring system, it's a little bit contradictory in that manner, because you're saying that our patterns and stuff are supposed to be one blow, one victory, and then competition you get disqualified for excessive contact. Now, I understand sparring is to demonstrate skill and stuff like that, so that's why it'd be no problem. Just add in another discipline where it can be full contact. I think that'd be safe.
I'm sure you wouldn't be alone or with supporters for that. I understand the other side of it, that it is this controlled element, and as top martial artist, you should have this control that you can stop it on a dime or whatever. So I see both sides to the argument,
Yeah.
And especially I think as well, when we look at the bigger picture of Taekwondo sometimes with the audience that it is now, it's not just about, I mean, with a huge kind of population of kids doing Taekwondo, right? I think that, I don't know if parents would love the idea of full contact sparring for kids. I don't think I'd love the idea of full contact sparring for kids, but I don't know.
I'd be a fan of that myself.
So I can see how I can see all the roadblocks that would go up straight away to this, but like you said, I mean, if there's two sort of senior black belts that want to have a go, and maybe we should let them at it. I don't know.
That's it. And I think just by having the two disciplines, it would, obviously, people who have no interest in that side of it or who wouldn't fancy getting involved, absolutely. Like, the current system is still there to compete in sparring, and it's not full contact. That's cool. But just to have that avenue for people if they wanted to give it a go. Because I think now what's happening at the moment is, if somebody takes a notion at the moment, let's say a world or European champion or some type of black belt, if they want to go down a full contact route, they have to leave the sport. So if it was there within the sport, you just keep them in it, and then they could go between the two or whatever. Something to look at, and I think if it was discussed, I'm sure there could be some middle ground definitely come up.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen similar things in WACO, right, where they have the multidisciplines across.
Yeah, multidisciplines, K1, light contact, points. Yeah.
Interesting. It'll always start a debate, definitely.
That's it.
I mean, tell me quickly going forward about the club now. I mean, what's the plan for the club? Are you going to try and drive it to be a competitive, successful club? Is that in your sphere of things that are on your list, or is it strictly your own focus at the moment, and the club is maybe not so much the primary focus in terms of development? Is that a long-term project?
No, the clubs gets a lot of my attention at the moment, because I'm lucky enough now that, like, I finished college last year. Yeah. So all I do at the moment is I train and I teach a club. So, like, there's 24 hours in a day, take 8 out for sleep. I have 16 hours.
You can do something like
that. I can only train for, let's say 4 of them. So I plan out all my sessions. I'm always looking at different ways to improve my coaching. The club is very much at the forefront of my mind, because I want to give these kids an opportunity that when they come of age, they're ready to pursue international competition or high level national competition, if that's what they wish. The philosophy sort of I like to keep, it is for sure a club for all. If you don't want to compete, you're not forced to compete. But we strongly advise that you compete. I know that there's a lot of ifs changing there, but like,
no, I think we'd have a similar philosophy to you there as well.
Don't make anybody do it, but Jesus, I just think all kids should be competing in some capacity.
You just learn so much from it about life. It's not just about martial arts. You just gain so much from it.
That's it.
It's fantastic. Do you fancy a few rapid fire questions before we wrap?
Which ones?
Do you fancy a few rapid fire questions before we wrap?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
Awesome. What's your favorite pattern?
Hwarang.
What's the pattern you definitely don't want to get in your next test?
Juche.
What was your toughest fight?
Taekwondo just.
Yeah.
Ludwig Sale World Championships 2017.
That was in the quarters?
Last 16.
Last 16, yeah. What else? 3 boards. What do you use to break them?
Psychic.
Psychic, yeah. Very nice. I'm trying to think what else I can ask you. Yeah, no, I know what you'll say to that. I can't ask you that. Doesn't matter. Right, look, I don't know. I mean, it's all just fun and games.
Yeah, that's it.
Look, Mr. Shelley, I've really appreciated you sitting down and chatting with me. There's loads more we could dig into, and I'm sure we will in the future. You know, when we meet up. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I could spend the whole night just talking to you about, you know, coaching and how we go about that, as well as, you know, method, and I'm sure more people would love that, as well as getting a few war stories. I mean, actually, while we have you, war story. I mean, you said Ludwig Sale was your toughest fight. Why? Why was that a hard fight?
I don't know what happened in that fight, to be honest. First of all, in the lead up to that competition, I hadn't sparred for like 4 or 5 weeks. I fractured my eye socket before it in boxing sparring, so I didn't spar for 5 weeks before that event, and I was actually quite limited in any training I could do because of the jolting on the eye and stuff. So
the coaches were thrilled with you about that.
Yeah, no, didn't go down too well, but yeah, so it was touch and go as to even if I was going to compete at the competition.
I remember this now, yeah.
And then, so what happened? Yeah, I was going through my fights. To be honest, I was a little bit shaky just in terms of my distance and timing, I felt. I was always able to do enough to win my spars. But with Ludwig then, I was winning comfortably, and then he just seemed to claw back a little bit, and it just got very close very fast. And it ended up going to first point. It was my first time ever going to first point in Taekwondo. So I beat him in first point. And you know what? It was like somebody just slapped me in the face. Because I went on then, and who are my next 3? Nej, Roman, and Camille. And they're good lads. And I beat the 3 of them handy. Like, you know, it was just because I was that close from sort of.
Yeah, it was a wake-up call. You needed it.
You know, I was just like, geez, I hadn't had any majorly close fights for a couple of years in ITF. Like, you know, I hadn't been, and it nearly all got taken away from me there.
Yeah. Especially on first point, right? Which is like, you know.
That's it. And so it was just weird. I just, I don't know, to be honest with you, I just things weren't clicking at the time. And then with the, obviously with my eye thing, my distance and stuff wasn't maybe at its sharpest. And then just after the fight, then I just said, right, you know what, that's not happening again. And I just seemed to up it a few gears for the next 3 matches, which I was lucky to be able to do that. But yeah, so I have to call that my closest fight because, yeah, it was first point, my first time ever going there.
Nice. Awesome. Look, I mean, the stories are great, and I'm sure you have many more, and I'm sure we'd love to get into them. I can see my red light flashing on my camera, though, so I don't think I'm going to get much more life out of it. But yeah, look, man, it's been such a great chat with you. I really appreciate it. And look, I hope you stay safe, and same to the family. And hopefully we'll be back on the mat soon. And I look forward to seeing you out there. And we'll definitely have you down to Carrick for a session sometime if you'll be around.
Absolutely. Same to you. I hope you stay safe, and wish all your family well in the next few weeks.
Rock and roll, sir. Thank you very much. Look, have a good one.
Cheers for having me on. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.